Hey everybody, welcome in, it's Nova here, Rock and Stone. DRG's Season 5 experimental build is out now. I went ahead and took a look at the new mission type as well as all 12 overclocks that have been added to the game. Every single primary weapon got one. We're going to take a look at all of those in this video. I'm going to give you my first impressions of them, as well as my first impressions of the new mission type. Alright, so the first thing we're going to take a look at is that new mission type that has been added to the game. So when you spawn in, you'll notice that there's a flashing bar in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. It also has a distance meter. You'll need to follow this around, and it will be pinging as well. There is an audible pinging noise. What you're looking for is these crystals that are hidden in the ground. There can either be 3 crystals or 5, as of the recording of this video, that you need to locate using that pinging system, and there is an audible noise. When you get closer, it does get faster. And then you dig into the ground once you get close enough to it, and you call down this little pod similar to the ones we called during lithophage missions with a meteor, and then you hook it up to the crystal, and then, whack it to finish the connection. Once you have finished finding either all 3 or all 5, the drill elevator gets called, and then you and your allies gather around it, start it up similar to how you might start a machine event, and it drills down through the ground. It even pierces through the bedrock of the map, which is kind of cool. And you're just defending yourself with the bugs crawling down after you. And then once you get to the bottom, there's this very colorful cavern that opens up, and you need to find 7 morkite seeds. They're in these little green and grayish black pods, so you may have to get creative depending on how they spawn, as far as getting to them and what class you are. So once you've collected 7 of them, you put them into Molly, and then you can call the escape pod. What's cool is, after you do that, after you call the escape pod, you get these special jet boots. They're considered Mark II according to mission control, and they fly you up leagues faster than the normal jet boots. They cool down leagues faster, so then you're not falling to your death trying to get up there, unless you overheat them repeatedly. And then you use those to escape the mission. I found it pretty interesting, especially trying to figure out how to navigate with the pulsing and the radar kind of sounds. I thought it was pretty fun. I think this could be a pretty fun mission type, especially with certain mutators. You know what I mean? Alright, now we're going to dig into the overclocks that were added with Season 5. The first one we're going to take a look at is Rotary Overdrive for the minigun. What this one does is it shoots your rate of fire through the roof. It increases it by quite a bit. You also get these cooling charges. You start with 12, and they can be restocked from a resupply pod. Each of those charges reduces the heat of the minigun and can also remove it from overheat status. To trigger a coolant injection, press the reload button, so you can reload the minigun, in a way. The main downside with this one is the weapon overheats quicker than normal. Honestly, that's not really an issue, especially with aggressive venting on the minigun. You could just be overheating it over and over and over again in pretty rapid succession and apply those heat stacks and the fear stacks just one after another. You could potentially clear out crowds that are sitting around you or your allies pretty easily. It's very devastating. I really enjoyed playing with this one. There's a lot of potential with it. Alright, now we're gonna start talking about the overclock the autocannon received for this season, and that is mortar rounds. This one is basically, as the name implies, you fire mortar projectiles in an arc out from the gun. You have a significant boost in your AoE damage, and you actually get a pretty good range boost as well. You basically have no direct damage at this point. You're a full AoE with this overclock. It's not really an issue though. You do have a slower rate of fire, as well as a slower maximum rate of fire, and your ammo is cut down by quite a bit. You can definitely more than make up for this though, with the sheer power and area damage that this overclock has. It's honestly absurd. You do want to watch out for the drop off though. You can kind of see where your shots are going, so it's not too hard to aim this one. I guess maybe just don't aim it off of cliffs or something. I really enjoyed this one too. The damage is honestly nuts that you can do with it. I ran it with fear when I did it on stream. Worked out pretty good actually. This one is another very good one, just like the last one we talked about with the minigun. Alright, now we're going to talk about the overclock that the Hurricane is receiving with Season 5, and that is cluster charges. This one is kind of similar to explosive reload on the Sabata and embedded detonators on the Zhukovs, with a slight difference. So when the missiles are in the air, you can hit the reload button and then they will explode. And, you know, send little bomblets everywhere. And you have a significant damage boost to your rockets, so even if you're not using the reload feature, you still have quite a bit of damage. Your projectiles are slower, though. It's not really a big deal. And you also have a significantly reduced magazine and ammo, total ammo capacity. Your damage basically doubles, though, so it's kind of one of those classic trade-offs. You get double damage for half the ammo, kind of like how elephant rounds works. The little bomblets are pretty fun to watch. It's a little spectacle. It's like you're sending fireworks all over the place. Gunner this season basically had an even stronger crowd control set of overclocks added to his arsenal, with all three of these, actually. The one for the minigun, the autocannon, and the Hurricane. They're all very, very, very good crowd clearers. Alright, now we're going to look into the overclocks that Scout received with Season 5. We're going to start with the GK2, and we're going to look at Burst Fire. What this one does is it turns the GK into a 3-round Burst Fire weapon. You have less recoil while you are firing the weapon, and you have an increased magazine capacity, so that's pretty good. You do have a slower rate of fire, though, but that's purely because of the fact that now it's a Burst Fire weapon instead of full auto. I didn't really have an issue with this one. I don't dislike it. I just prefer the GK to be full auto, especially running more almost full rate of fire. I find that to be more fun for me. You definitely have a lot more control with this overclock, though, because it's not full auto. It's a lot easier to aim your shots. You can be more accurate at long range, potentially, with this one. So it's not a bad one. I did like playing around with it. Alright, now we're going to look at the overclock that the M1000 received with Season 5, and that is Marked for Death. This one makes your focus shot cause enemies to temporarily take more damage. This appears to last for about 2 to 3 seconds when I was doing field testing on stream. Your focus speed increases by a good bit. However, you also have an increased focus shot ammo cost. It now costs 3 ammo to fire instead of 2. And your clip size is smaller, and you basically don't have any focus shot damage anymore. So this is kind of your support for the M1000, especially against dreadnoughts. It was very, very damaging to them, especially when combined with hyperpropellant against the OG dreadnought. It deals a crap ton of damage, and you can just keep firing it over and over and over again. And one of my fellow gamers, Diamond, who's also my channel moderator, found out that if you're using blow-through rounds, it actually can spread that damage increase to multiple targets. So if you're somebody that likes blow-through on the M1000 and dealing a you-know-what ton of damage, this one might be an overclock for you to consider. I really enjoyed playing with it. I found it to be pretty fun to use. Alright, so the overclock that the Drac received with Season 5 is called Conductive Thermals. What this one does is, upon hit and for 8 seconds after an enemy is hit, it applies a temporary buff to both heat and cold damage as well as shock, so all 3 of our basic elemental effects. And affected enemies can also be heated and cooled faster. However, your damage is cut down and you have more heat generated per shot. It's not really a big deal though. Those 2 downsides, you can more than make up for that. With your loadouts, both in solo and with your teammates. I found this one to be pretty good with overcharged PCF in Tier 4, because then you can kind of feed into yourself with the shock, because your shots apply electricity with overcharged PCF. And as far as more heat generated per shot, if you take the less heat per shot upgrade, it basically goes back down to normal. It's like 102%, so it's negligible difference from base kit. This one was actually pretty good, pretty damaging, especially against Praetorians. I had a couple instances where they were shredded a lot faster than normal without even having to do that much. This one was pretty fun too. has a lot of potential, I think, especially in synergy with your teammates. Like if you got a driller running the flamethrower or the cryo cannon or something, or even just your other teammates running thermal elements on their weapons. Alright, now we're gonna move into Driller. We're gonna take a look at the flamethrower first. The overclock that Driller received on the flamethrower with Season 5 is called Scorching Tide. So what this one does is you hold the reload button and it fires a horizontal cone of fire straight out in front of you. This is pretty crazy. It can knock out grunt hordes very, very quickly. I was watching this and I'm like, whoa. It takes 25 ammo to do this when you do fire it. That's one of the downsides, is that it consumes a lot of ammo upon using it. And you have greatly reduced movement speed during charging. Honestly, that part is not really a big deal because it charges pretty quickly. It doesn't even take about 2 seconds, maybe at the most. So unless you're in like a really dense crowd, you might have trouble, but otherwise it's not really going to be a problem. The damage is pretty good, and you can spam, depending on your build, you can spam 2 or 3 of these before having to reload, so you can use it on you if there's a crowd of bugs coming, or if you're trying to res a teammate, you can throw a couple of these out, try to clear the bugs out from around them. There's a lot of crowd control with this one. I really did enjoy it. It's just fun firing it out straight in front of you and just go... Okay, the next overclock we're going to be talking about is called Crystal Nucleation for the cryo cannon. What this one does is it behaves pretty similarly to how sticky fuel behaves on the flamethrower. It creates slowing and damaging sticky frost on terrain impact, and you can see the icy spikes coming out from the ground. This damage is affected by any cooling and damage mods that you have. So enemies walking across it will cool faster if you have cooling mods, and if you've got more damage. Pretty self-explanatory there. The only downside here is that your ammo is cut down. This one was pretty interesting to play with. I'm not normally a fan of sticky fuel. I like to just go full damage, or like half damage, half range, kind of with compact feed valves. But this one was pretty fun to play with regardless. It does have a lot of potential, especially with like Vampire. For those of you who are fans of Vampire and running the cryo cannon, this is another pretty good option for you. I would recommend it for those of you who like that particular playstyle. Alright, so the overclock that the sludge pump is receiving for Season 5 is called Volatile Compound. What this one does is any enemy that is affected by the goo, or any puddles that might be on the ground somewhere, will ignite and explode when you apply a heat source. The easiest way to do this is with the EPC and Burning Nightmare, because then you can just cause a bunch of explosions all over the place. The main downside to this one is it does take more ammo to fire those charged shots. That's not really a big deal. You can do quite a bit of damage combining your goo with Burning Nightmare. You can also synergize with any fellow drillers if they're running the flamethrower, or any of your other classes, like if you have a gunner who's running Burning Hell, that's another good option. I was playing around with this one and I really enjoyed it, seeing the explosions. There's a lot of potential with this one too. Alright, last but certainly not least, we're going to be talking about Engineer and his overclocks. The first one we got is for the Warthog. It is called Pump Action. This does just as the name implies. It turns the Warthog into a pump action shotgun, and the animation matches to boot. You've got a pretty good damage increase that comes with this one. You get 1 extra pellet as well, and you also get blow through with this, which is pretty wicked. You do have a pretty significantly reduced magazine and ammo capacity though, and your base spread increases by 25%. It's not as much as with Cycle Overload, so the spread is actually pretty manageable. I don't think you need the mod in Tier 2. I would strongly advise taking ammo instead, because then you can get more shots. You're not really firing the Warthog at super long range anyway. I found this one to be pretty cool, even if just for the animation of the pumping of the gun. But it's pretty powerful too. That damage increase is no joke. I really enjoyed this one. Alright, the next one we're going to talk about is Hyper Alloy Assembly for Stubby. What this one does is it significantly reduces your base spread. Your weak point damage goes up by quite a bit. You have a really big increase to your recoil, so you do want to be careful with this one. I'd recommend taking the recoil reduction mod to mitigate this. It works out much better. and you also have a decreased magazine capacity. This one actually felt pretty decent. Is it as powerful as something like EMV Fire Booster? No. But is it something that definitely has utility? Absolutely. Especially with your recoil reduction mod in Tier 2. You can hit the weak spots pretty easily, even with the recoil that is left after the reduction mod. And the weak point damage makes it so you can take out Praetorians pretty quickly. I found myself able to take them down way faster than normal. So it's not all bad. I kinda liked playing with it. Alright, last but certainly not least, with the new overclocks for Season 5, we're going to be taking a look at Smart Trigger Operating System for the Loki Smart Rifle. What this one does is, after locking onto targets, the gun will automatically start to fire, so it kind of turns into a full auto weapon, in a way. You also have a significantly faster lock acquisition rate. It's almost instantaneous. However, you can't really have a whole lot of simultaneous locks anymore. It goes down to 2. So I would recommend taking the mod in Tier 4 so that you can at least have 4 locks at a time instead of 2. This one actually felt kind of interesting. It might be tricky to hit weak spots with this one because of how fast you are locking on, but that's not necessarily a bad thing either. You know, if you need stuff to die that's right in front of you, you're going to be able to do that a lot easier with this overclock compared to other overclocks or even just firing the weapon straight. This one was kind of fun to play around with. I feel like it has its use, like if you're behind something and you're getting the weak spots better. Again, that might be an issue for some folks, but I didn't really see it as a problem. Alright, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video of my first impressions of Season 5. What first impressions do you guys have of Season 5, of the overclocks, of the new mission, or really of about anything? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, fellow miners, rock and stone.